Good afternoon from not so sunny Philadelphia. Today I wanted to talk to you about light conditions specific to your home or your environment. So the first thing to ask yourself is, what direction do your windows face? Now in my home, I live in a city that's basically a grid, but my area happens to be a bit diagonal from the grid. It's a little bit off the grid. That's a good way of putting it. And so my front windows, the windows of the front of my home, which is what you're looking at right now, face the southwest. More south than west. Now, highlight orchids need at least southern exposure, right? So this is where all of my highlight orchids are located. And when it gets too bright for them, what I do is I put the shade down or I place some sort of a plexiglass protective barrier between the window and the orchids. And there I have a humidifier to provide them with a little bit of extra moisture. And they seem to be doing fine. I mean, aside from my issues with cattleyas, which I just kind of mentioned in the last video, everybody else seems to be doing fine. Everyone's growing roots, everyone's growing pseudobulbs, and so on. On this side, there's my cat. That's blood orange. He's sleeping. Anyway, on this side I have 3 dendrobiums, and they're doing great as well. The one on the left, definitely, it was just repotted, so it's a little bit shriveled, but I'm sure it'll bounce back. And the other 2 are doing well. And then in this little pot here, I've got a jade plant that I'm trying to get to grow a little cutting. So that's this front room. Now, the second question to ask, and I'll show you the other rooms in a minute, but the second question to ask yourself is, what floor are you on? Right? That's also really important. So this is the 3rd floor, and in front of my home, there is nothing. There is actually an empty lot. And so with an empty lot there, it means I don't have another building covering any of my light. So these orchids get quite a bit of sunlight as a result. Now the other thing to ask yourself is, what are the needs of your orchids, and can you provide them? So again, these are highlight orchids. And there are some orchids that I'm dying to get, but I've been waiting, I've been putting it off because I still want to prove to myself that I can get cattleyas to bloom before I move on to anything that requires even more lights than the cattleyas, such as Vanda orchids, for instance. So can you provide these needs? That might take some time. That might take some experimentation. And so the final thing to note is to be flexible, right? Being flexible is important. Being able to move things around. So what I wanted to point out to you were some of my other orchids. And the reason I wanted to show these to you is because I just moved my catasetum type orchids over here. So this window right here, also the 3rd floor, but it is a northeastern facing window. It still is bright, but it doesn't get as much light as the windows I just showed you. And so over here, I've recently placed my 2 oncidium type orchids and my 2 catasetum type orchids. So why did I decide to move them? Well, I noticed that with this orchid in particular, this is my oncidium sherry baby, you can see there are spots on the leaf of my orchid. And this is sun. This is sun. These are not pests. This comes from a bit of sunburn. And this monster oncidium, no ID, also kind of got a little bit of sunburn. And also you can see there's some crinkly leaves. I'm dealing with it. I need to divide it. I just haven't had a chance to. But I've decided to move them here because it will give them a little bit less light and hopefully they will be less stressed out. Now the catasetums, I moved these guys because in my readings, in all of my research that I've done so far and in various videos that have been uploaded on YouTube, people talk about how much light to provide to your catasetum type orchids. And the reason for this is because catasetum type orchids will either produce male flowers or female flowers. And people want male flowers. Male flowers meaning it has a blob of pollen in it. Now, the male flowers are showier they're more beautiful. They're more desired. The female flowers have this weird hood helmet thing on them that most people find very strange looking. I still think that they're interesting looking, and I wouldn't mind it if I got female flowers, but the male flowers are the ones that are super colorful. And of course, we all want our orchids to have beautiful colors. So I've recently moved them here, and you can see they are in full swing. They're growing wonderfully. They're just gorgeous. I love them. And this, by the way, is all thanks to Holy City Orchids. I wouldn't have even known what the heck a catasetum was if it hadn't been for her. So shout out to her, because seriously, she knows where it's at. Anyway, the last room I wanted to show you is the bathroom on the 3rd floor. This is where I do all of my orchid watering. It's a nice space. And this is where I have my low light orchids. So I keep the shades drawn at all times. I have the window open to give some airflow, and the low light orchids are doing really, really well. Anyway, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day and take care. Bye.